All right, let's get into it. Today we're tackling a really interesting topic, one that causes a ton of debate, everywhere from gyms to scientific labs, especially around times like Ramadan. And that's the connection between fasting and your physical performance. You'd think it's simple, right? No food equals no power. But the science, well, it tells a much more complicated story. So let's unravel it together.
So this is the big question, isn't it? Is fasting a total performance killer, or could it actually be some kind of secret weapon? And this matters. Whether you're an athlete, someone who's into intermittent fasting for health, or one of the millions fasting for religious reasons, this question is personal. Does skipping meals totally tank your physical abilities, or could it somehow unlock a hidden edge?
You know, our intuition tells us one thing. No food in the tank means no fuel for the engine. No fuel means no power. It just makes logical sense. But as we're about to find out, when you actually dig into the research, the reality is, well, it's a whole lot messier than that. Turns out our bodies are way more adaptable than we give them credit for.
Okay, so let's start with the side of the argument that lines up with our gut feeling. There is a ton of research out there showing a clear, measurable drop in performance when people try to exercise while fasted. This is the evidence that screams, yep, no fuel really does mean less power.
And we're not just talking about feeling a little bit tired or sluggish. No, these declines are specific, they're measurable, and they've been seen across a bunch of different sports. We're talking less power in sprints, weaker muscle contractions, slower swimming times, you name it. For anything that requires those short, explosive bursts of energy, the impact can be pretty significant.
But here's where it gets really fascinating. The hit isn't just physical. One study, for instance, clocked a 3.8% drop in exercise performance. But it also found that the people fasting had way less motivation and didn't enjoy the workout as much. So fasting can make exercise feel physically harder, and at the same time, it can just drain your willpower to even do it.
Okay, so case closed, right? Fasting is bad for performance, end of story. Well, not so fast. This is where the whole thing gets a twist. Because there is a surprisingly large amount of research that finds the complete opposite, that performance holds totally steady, and sometimes it even gets better.
So let's look at this other side of the coin. You've got studies on athletes doing repeated sprints that find zero difference whether they've eaten or not. There was this one incredible study on female CrossFit athletes that showed even after a full 24-hour fast, their performance wasn't hurt at all. And then you have other reports of improved endurance and even a better mental ability to handle the stress of competing.
And this quote from a research paper just sums it up perfectly. Despite the obvious challenge of fasting, many athletes manage to train and compete with barely any negative effects. So this isn't some rare exception. It's a really common finding. And it forces us to stop asking, is fasting good or bad, and start asking a much better question.
So what we have here is a real paradox. How can fasting crush performance one day and have no effect the next? Well, the answer isn't that the science is all over the place. It's that the outcome isn't just random chance. It all comes down to how you manage the fast.
So what is it? What's the secret sauce that separates a performance drop from performance staying strong? It turns out it's not one thing. It's a handful of key variables that pretty much act like levers. And if you know how to pull them, you can totally influence the outcome.
And here they are. These are the 5 levers that make up your personal fasting performance equation. We've got meal timing, strategic nutrition, sleep quality, training adaptation, and finally, your psychological framing or mindset. If you can get a handle on these, you pretty much crack the code. So let's dive into the first one, meal timing.
Okay, lever number 1, when you eat. During Ramadan, this is known as the suhoor effect. Research shows that athletes who eat their pre-dawn meal, the suhoor, super early are way more likely to see their performance drop off later in the day. But if you can push that meal as late as possible, getting it in closer to sunrise, it helps a ton in minimizing that decline and even keeps you sharper mentally in the morning.
And this chart really drives that timing point home, but this time for your actual workout. Your anaerobic performance, that's your explosive power for stuff like lifting or sprinting, it often stays pretty stable if you train in the morning. But as the day goes on and that fast gets longer, that's when you see performance start to dip in the afternoon and evening. So yeah, when you choose to train during a fast is huge.
All right, lever number 2, strategic nutrition. This isn't just about when you eat, but what you're putting in your body when you do. A perfect example is caffeine.
One study found that having some caffeine before a workout could significantly buffer the negative effects of fasting on performance. It's like a little cheat code that helps offset some of the energy deficit.
Now for lever number 3, and this one is absolutely 100% critical, your sleep. The research on this is crystal clear. Better sleep equals better performance, period. Fasting, especially during Ramadan, can really mess with your sleep schedule, and learning how to manage that to protect your sleep is one of the most powerful things you can do to keep your fitness up.
And that brings us to our last two levers, which are kind of linked: adaptation and mindset. First, your body is an incredible machine. It can adapt to almost anything. Athletes who are smart about adjusting their training, maybe lowering the intensity or changing the type of workout, can absolutely maintain their performance. And then there's the mind. You can't underestimate it. For religious fasters, studies have found that the spiritual side of it, the rituals, actually improves their mental game, helping them cope with the physical demands.
So we've looked at all this conflicting research and the key variables that start to make sense of it all. So where does that leave you? Well, it leaves you with your own personal equation to solve.
I think the biggest takeaway from all of this is pretty simple. There is no one-size-fits-all answer here. The way fasting affects you is deeply personal, and it all boils down to how you choose to pull those 5 levers we just talked about. So we've laid out the pieces of the puzzle for you: when you eat, what you eat, how you sleep, how you train, and maybe most importantly, how you think about it all. The science doesn't just hand us a simple answer, but it does give us the tools to find our own. So the real question now is, what's in your equation? Thanks for joining me for this explainer.